It looks like some IU transfer targets will be making their decisions this week, but are the Hoosiers going to end up on the right side of them?
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Hoosiers, your one and only daily one-stop shop for everything IU athletics. I'm your host, as always, Jacob. I want to thank you guys for making us your first listen every single day. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. There wasn't a lot that happened this weekend directly related to IU when it comes to the transfer portal, but there were some indirect things that happened that are going to impact the Hoosiers one way or the other. It sounds like maybe Mike Woodson, for those that missed it last week, I don't imagine many of you did. He got surgery on his knee. Perhaps that's why there aren't visits going on this weekend, but I don't think IU would have turned anyone away if they really wanted to make the visit this week. Regardless, there are a couple of names that we discussed pretty heavily on in the transfer portal that look set to make decisions this week. Let's start with Chris Ledlum, perhaps the guy at the top of IU's list. And on the flip side, IU very well might be at the top of his list. He took a couple of visits this weekend. He took a visit to Tennessee on Friday and Saturday. Dalton Connect was reportedly there as well, for whatever that means. I'm not sure. When Ledlum took his visit to IU, it was with Kalel Ware. So he's doubling up on some of these visits, but I think that's just kind of the nature of these guys taking visits and between the dead periods and the active periods. So he was on Tennessee's campus. He was in Knoxville Friday and Saturday. On Sunday, he took a visit to St. John's. A one-day visit probably isn't, probably tells you where St. John's ranks on his kind of list, but he hasn't said anything yet. Those were the last visits he had scheduled. Commitment could be coming this week. It seems probably likely that it would be coming this week. I know, kind of reading reports and just kind of the scuttle. If you guys listen to Locked On college basketball, Andy mentioned it over there. Maybe a little surprising he hasn't even committed yet, because it really seems like the Hoosiers are out in front here. Now, we don't really have any reports about how the Tennessee or St. John's visits went, but it certainly felt like it was IU's, recruitment to lose. But hey, things change rapidly in the transfer portal, so I don't think anybody can feel necessarily comfortable. It all happened in a very short span that the Hoosiers got someone like Kalel Ware, and I think that's the best example of how much and how quickly these things change. So while IU might have once been leading for Ledlum, we don't know if that's true, but regardless, sounds like he's likely going to commit this week. So we very well may have a decision on him, and that'll be a big one. That's the big one to watch right now for IU. A name that we mentioned, another kind of closing the book on a transfer, Nicholas Timberlake, who we mentioned way at the beginning of the transfer portal. And there's a reason we haven't mentioned his name of late, because the Hoosiers kind of faded in his recruitment. He tweeted on Sunday that it was decision week. He never took a visit to IU. So I would say that effectively rules IU out of his recruitment. He's a talented player, and I would imagine he's going to make an impact wherever he goes next season. But IU has some talent even still. We're going to talk about somebody we haven't discussed at all as a player who could make an impact next season as a guard, which is what Timberlake is. The Hoosiers reached out to him. They had a Zoom / in-home meeting. That's as far as it seems to have gotten. So IU likely out on that one. Not necessarily related to the transfer portal, but one other thing of note is that Joey Baker at Michigan Duke got his decision on his medical red shirt heading into the weekend. Now, the decision itself doesn't matter because it was an entirely different situation with different circumstances. I bring it up because to just say that perhaps there could be a decision coming on Xavier Johnson. There is absolutely no timetable. 100% guessing when it comes to when a decision would come. There is no normal timetable for this. You're at the NCAA's mercy with this one. Just simply, this was someone that had a medical red shirt appeal that got their decision. That is all we're basing this on. I would imagine IU is expecting a decision soon because they have a transfer portal to recruit. But also the fact that they aren't going that heavily at point guards, I think tells you what way that they expect this decision to go. But again, be on the lookout for that as well. Last thing, before we talk about the aforementioned player I wanted to discuss, Tamar Bates, committed to Missouri, I believe Saturday night. It was over the weekend. Go find the picture that he tweeted out committing to Missouri. It's going to be the cutest picture you see all day, with his daughter dressed up as a tiger, a cub, whatever you want to call it. It was absolutely adorable. Zero hard feelings for Tamar Bates. Nobody listening or watching this should have any hard feelings towards him. It didn't work at IU. He gets a chance to try to make it work somewhere else. He's not in the Big Ten. There is no reason you shouldn't be rooting for him to find success. It's exactly what we're going to be doing here, hoping that he can make good on the potential that he showed at times at IU. So I hope things really work out for him at Missouri. His absence is one of the kind of guard openings the Hoosiers have that we'll discuss. There's a name that we haven't talked about that's going to be on IU's roster next season that I think could make an instant impact. We'll tell you who that is here in one moment. First, though, let's talk about today's sponsor, FanDuel. Grand slams, no hitters, double plays are back. There's no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. That's because right now, new customers can step up to the plate with a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon, sign up, place your first bet, and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you do not win. You can also use it for the NBA playoffs. I did a same-game parlay on the Lakers game on Sunday. I was wrong. I really wish I had those bonus bets because I missed out on that one. I don't get the bonus bets back, but you guys can if you sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon. You get that no sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join today. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Big thanks to you guys for making us your first listen every single day. Every dayers, tomorrow or potentially the next day, whenever there's a decision that comes either with Chris Ledlum, with Xavier Johnson, any of the transfer news, be sure you guys check us out. We will have that for you first thing. Make sure you're following us on Twitter and on YouTube. Subscribe on YouTube. We're closing in, I'm not kidding, very rapidly on 1,000 subscribers. That's our goal to get to. I was aiming before June. I think we can do it before May. Be sure you guys are subscribed. If you're watching us over there and you're not already, or just head on over there real quick and hit that subscribe button. So we've spent a lot of the last couple weeks talking about potential players that could be on the roster. There is a player that is going to be on the roster next season that I think is going to make an impact. Gabe Cupps is a freshman that's going to come in. He's going to be, he is a point guard that's going to be the backup point guard. I'm almost certain of it. I mean, IU doesn't have another point guard on the roster. There's a certain level of trust that they're going to have in him to play backup point guard. But an interesting kind of set of games for him recently kind of got me thinking about what his role could be on the team next season. He went with Team Ohio to Italy for this kind of traditional trip that Team Ohio takes. They played 5 games over there. A lot of players have went on that trip, LeBron among them, years and years ago. Games are played with a 24-second shot clock. It's kind of this like quote unquote tournament. I don't really know the format. I know ultimately he played 5 games and went 5-0, and they won whatever this tournament is called. In those 5 games, he averaged 16.1 or 16.2 points. He shot 9 of 28 from 3, which is only 32.1%. That's a concern. We'll talk about that in a second. By far the biggest stat that jumped out, though, was that he had 23 assists to 0 turnovers. Across 5 games, he did not turn the ball over once in a 24-second shot clock. It's not like you come up and you hold the ball for 90 seconds and run some clock. That ball's pinging around and you got to get a shot up. He did not turn the ball over once in 5 games. That is kind of indicative of the impact I think he's going to have on IU next season. IU's had some point guards that have been a little Jekyll and Hyde at times. Jalen Hood-Schifino, specifically when it came to turnovers, times looked like a freshman, which he was. Like, it's not a bad thing. He had a couple of not great decisions. They were boom or bust at times. He made some incredible passes, had some passes that made you think, have you ever played basketball before? But Xavier Johnson is a wild ride that at his best is one of the best point guards in the Big Ten. At his worst is a wild ride. What I think Gabe Cupps can bring to the table is just some stability, some playmaking ability, but just kind of cut out that low floor. He might come with a little bit of a lower ceiling, but right now with Xavier Johnson and Jalen Hood-Schifino, it was a lot of this. It was a lot of really high highs and really low lows. With Gabe Cupps, what you hope is that it's a little bit more like this, where the waves aren't as high either way, at least as a freshman when he's on the floor. He may not have the pull-up jumper or the ability to get to the rim. I'm not going to pretend that I've seen a lot of Gabe Cupps' game to know. I know he's going to be impactful at this level. But as a score-first option or kind of creating for himself, it might not be all the way there yet. But that playmaking is going to translate, and just taking care of the ball. Turnovers are frustrating and at times have plagued IU. Adding someone like Cupps who doesn't turn the ball over, that is going to be a very valuable player. We talked a lot about getting guys on the floor that can make plays and just multiple ball handlers. Cupps is that. I don't know how much Cupps and Xavier Johnson will play together, but I'd imagine him and Trey Galloway will play a fair amount together, guys like that. And he can make those. I mean, that's multiple guys that can make plays. The question is going to be a 3-pointer for him, which I'm not going to take a sample size of 28 threes to really extrapolate how good he's going to be. Also, a high school 3-point line is not the same as a college 3-point line, is not the same as international, everything like that. So Cupps last season from 3 was 37 of 97, which is 38.1. That's perfectly reasonable. He averaged 1.7 turnovers per game to 2.1 assists. So the turnovers, I mean, it was a different role he had with high school than maybe he would elsewhere. But regardless, this is a person that I think is going to come in and make an impact next year. Just judging by the fact that IU isn't recruiting a lot of true point guards. They have someone like L. Ellis they're going after. They did go after Caleb Love. But they're not going like super hard at only point guards. And that's what makes me think that they expect Cupps to have a role. I think they went after Love and Ellis because they're talented, not because they're point guards. And again, if IU's idea is to get multiple players out there, play faster, there's roles for Cups along with those guys. So I'm really interested to see him get on campus, see him on the court, see him playing alongside the Hoosiers this season, because he seems like someone that's going to come in right away and really be an instant impact freshman, which IU very well might need, depending on how the rest of this transfer portal plays out. Let's wrap up talking football. There was a spring game this weekend. It snuck up on me just like it snuck up on you. Let's look at what some of the takeaways were from spring game and spring practice to wrap up today's episode. We did not preview the spring football game. I'm going to be honest, I forgot to on Friday because I was looking up transfer news and rumors and forgot to stick in the spring game stuff. There wasn't a lot that really went on in this game. This wasn't your traditional like spring game. It was like a spring practice where they were just kind of going through drills. For some reason, IU is just immune to the idea of a spring game like what everybody else has. Whatever. At least they invited people this year. They didn't even do that last year. So what are some of the kind of takeaways, the storylines to monitor after the spring game? Well, IU has a quarterback battle again, which a little surprising to me. Tayven Jackson came in, and I just kind of thought, all right, he's going to be the guy. And he still could be. But from the sounds of it, him and Brendan Sorsby are going to be competing for that spot. And we saw a little bit of Sorsby last year, very little. I think one game, that Penn State game, before they went to Dexter Williams, they brought him in. He looked like a true freshman playing quarterback. There wasn't much to glean from that game. Outside of that, we didn't see a lot of him. Now, this is way back when IU brought in that recruiting class. That was part of the Deshaun McCulley class, the top 25 class that had a whole lot of hype around it. We had John Garcia on the podcast. You guys can go back and find the podcast. There aren't many with John Garcia. He's our college football recruiting expert. I don't bring him on often because there isn't a reason to, but brought him on and I asked him kind of some of his thoughts about the other players in the class outside of McCullough and some dark horses. He pointed out Brendan Sorsby. This was someone that really stuck out to him and was someone that had kind of the physical tools that really jump off the paper, jump off the screen, or when you're watching him, they really stick out. So there's stuff there, and we'll see it more and more as he gets more time at the college level, but it seems like there's a legitimate battle. We'll see how it plays out. I would think Tayven Jackson would come here with maybe not assurances he would start, but assurances. And so I'd be surprised. I feel like he probably has a leg up in the battle. What I do know is we're not going to know who starts this game until kick off the Ohio State game on September 2nd. Yeah, we open with a Big Ten game again, and yeah, it's Ohio State again. Cool. Super thrilled about that. We're not going to know who starts until then. We went through this last year. It's silly. Whatever. Nonetheless, it's going to be just like last year where that's going to be the talk of fall practice, fall camp, is that there's a QB battle and we're not going to know the answer. A big positive, figuratively and literally, Andre Carter seems like someone who is going to be a menace defensively. He was one of the defensive MVPs through the spring. Defensive lineman who is huge, just looks enormous, and was making all sorts of plays. If you want to throw a joke in about it's not hard to make plays against IU's offensive line, I wouldn't stop you. I'm not going to make that joke myself. But look, IU hasn't had a defensive lineman and a defensive line that's really made an impact in a long time. someone like Andre Carter could be kind of a game changer for them in that regard. They've had really good linebackers. They've had a really good secondary on paper, at least. But if you're getting beat up front, like the game's won in the trenches, and that's how the old saying goes. So if Andre Carter is someone that can help you win that game in the trenches, maybe that changes IU's fate a little bit on the defensive side of the ball. They have a lot of people to replace on that side of the ball. So I'd be surprised if they have a really strong defense this year. But Andre Carter seems like someone that is going to just be a great player for IU. He's only going to be here for one season. He transferred from Western Michigan. Could be a really big season, though. Donaven McCulley is the last one. His name I saw a fair amount. IU was down a fair amount of receivers. They lost guys to the transfer portal, to graduation, to the draft and whatnot. They didn't have all their transfers come in yet, but from what I read, the highlights I saw, Donaven McCulley had a strong spring. He better. That's where I'll go with that. Cam Camper was one of the guys that was not available this spring. He will be available kind of moving forward and heading into the summer and fall camp, but he wasn't available in the spring. There were no like lingering injuries. That's one of the big stories, is that IU isn't like exiting spring camp with injury concerns. Everybody's going to be available, and everybody's healthy. Knock on wood if you have any around you. But back to McCulley, like I said, he better. That was IU's QB of the future, and he moved to wide receiver. Fair enough. I'm not going to hold that against him yet, but he wasn't a factor last season. You can probably think of the times Donaven McCulley had a catch because that was it. He's got to be a factor this season, or otherwise there's a lot of questions that are going to have to be raised as to why you let a top QB recruit change to wide receiver and not be a factor. The good news is early signs are he'll be a factor and he'll be someone that can make plays. But again, there's a lot of focus, I think a lot of pressure on him this year to be someone that jumps off the paper and that can make an impact, because boy, he'd be in that QB battle. He probably would have been starting last year again. Just wild that how things played out. I'm reserving complete judgment until I see how he performs as a wide receiver. Maybe he's a fantastic wide receiver and Tayven Jackson is that guy, and the two of them form a partnership that everyone will be talking about. Maybe. But again, Donaven McCulley could really use a strong season next season. Thanks again, guys, for making Locked On Hoosiers your first listen every single day. Everydayers, tomorrow, maybe not tomorrow. We're kind of playing it by ear, if I'm being honest about transfer news. We're going to start players' season reviews, and almost certainly this week, but we're kind of playing things by ear with the transfer news. If on Monday afternoon, Chris Ledlum commits wherever, that's going to be what we talk about. But otherwise, we're going to start talking about the men's and women's team, doing some player-by-player kind of capsules, season reviews, look ahead a little bit, all that fun stuff. So follow us on Twitter if you haven't already, so you can stay up to date with all the transfer news. Subscribe to the podcast if you haven't, whether on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Help us get to 1,000 subscribers. Leave a rating and review if you can, if you do subscribe over at Apple or Spotify. Most importantly, though, guys, I hope you all have a great start to your week. And as always, LEO.